Hey mathematicians, let's talk about rounding. We're going to do some rounding to the nearest whole number, but to start I want to think about rounding to the nearest 10. That's something that we have had some practice at. When we're rounding, the question asks us or tells us what we're rounding to. This one's telling us round to the nearest 10. This would be the tens column right there. There's nothing in it. This is the ones column right here with the 7 in it. So if it's asking me to round to the nearest 10, I need to look at the column to the right, which is this ones column, and use that number to do my rounding. Over here I've got my rounding hill. You might be familiar with this, you might not be. On this left hand side of the hill that would round down, I've got 0, 1, 2, 3 and 4. You can see that they're going to go down this side of the hill. On the right hand side of the hill, I've got my other numbers that round up, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So wherever that number that we're using falls on the hill, that tells us, does it round down or does it round up? This 7 is on the right hand side of the hill, so we know that this number 7 is going to round up to the nearest 10, which would be 10. 9, I'm thinking about not the tens column but the ones column, so the 9 is on the right hand side of the hill, it's going up to 10. 13, again I'm thinking about, because the question's asking about the tens column, so I'm thinking about the number in the ones column. That tells me which way to go. 13, well, the 3 is on the left hand side of the hill, so it is rounding down to 10. 15, I'm using the 5. The 5 is on the right hand side of the hill, so 15 is going up. 15 goes up to the next 10, which is 20. Last example here, 26. The 6 is on the right side of the hill, so that means 26 is going to round up. The next 10 that it will get to is 30. Okay, so that's rounding whole numbers to the nearest 10. But what about if we want to round fractions to the nearest whole number? Well, it works exactly the same. We just have to look at a different place value column. Let's have a look. 0.3. The question is asking us to round to the nearest whole. This is the whole number column, isn't it? The place value column of ones. Whole ones. Those are two different words for the same thing. So we want to look at the next column to the right, which is this tenths column. In this example, 0.3, 3 is in the tenths column. So we take it over and we think about, okay, where does 3 fall on our hill? It's on the left hand side. So this 0.3 is going to be rounding down. Well, what's the nearest whole that we're going to reach? I think we're just going to get to 0 because we're not going up, are we? We'll have to go down to 0. Another example, 0.8. Again, think about this place value column. Take the 8 over here. Where's the 8? It's going up. So that means that our 0.8 will be rounding up to the next nearest whole, which is just 1. 1 whole it would be. We could also write it like that. Next example, 0.5. Thinking about the tenths column, the 5 over here is on the right hand side of the hill. I know it's going to round up, and again it's going to round up to 1 whole or 1.0. Let's try one with a whole already there. 1.2. So we're asking about rounding to the nearest whole. It could either go down to 1 or up to 2. We're thinking about what's in this tenths column. 2. 2 is on the left hand side of the hill, so we know it has to round up. What's the next whole number? From 1.2 it rounds up. Well, it would get to 2 wholes. We could write 2.0 or just leave it as 2. They mean the same thing. Let's try one more. 7.6. Okay, 7.6. It's either going to go down to 7 or up to 8. Those are the two ways that it could round, up, down, or up. 7.6, I'm thinking about the 6 in the tenths column. The 6 is on the right-hand side of the hill, so I know it's going up. And what do we talk about? It's going up to 8. So that's rounding to the nearest whole. Let's have a look at some more examples that might look a little bit more tricky, but are really not. See if you can do them ahead of me. All right, did you have a go? 12.1, we're rounding to the nearest whole. So we would either be going down to just 12 or up to 13. 1 in the tenths column is on the left-hand side of the hill, so we know that this is going up to 13. 72.0, well, 0 in the tenths column is definitely on the left-hand side of the hill. I think we're just going to be staying at 72. We didn't really go up or down there, did we? We just kind of stayed where we were. 134.9. There's something in the hundreds column, but does that really make a difference with my rounding? Not really. I'm still rounding to the nearest whole number in this ones column, so I'm using the tenths column. 9 is on the right-hand side of the hill, so it's going up. What's the next number above 134? 135. 24.12. Ooh, we've got 2 decimal places, some tenths and some hundredths. But we're still rounding to the nearest whole, aren't we? We're still looking for this number here. We're rounding that number there. So it's either going to be going down to 24, just 24, or up to 25. Now, here, we're still looking at that same tenths column because it's to the right of the ones column. 2 hundredths, it doesn't really matter. It's kind of there and a little bit confusing, but it doesn't really make a difference to our rounding. The 1 is on the left-hand side of the hill, so I know that I'm rounding down. So I'm rounding down to 24, or I could write it as 24.00. Same thing. I like to get rid of the zeros if they're there because they don't mean anything. We don't need them. 72.77. Again, I'm not so worried about that hundredths column. I'm worried about the tenths column. 7 is on the right-hand side of the hill, so we're rounding up to 73. 44.06. Oh, tricky one here. We've got a 0 in the tenths column. Well, is it tricky? 0 still is on the left-hand side of the hill, so we're rounding down. 44.06 rounds down to just 44. We only really rounded down by 6 hundredths, but we still rounded down a little bit. Last example, 53.91. 3 is the whole, so we're looking at 9 in the tenths column. 9 is on the right-hand side of the hill. We're going up. 54. And that's how we round to the nearest whole.